Fantasy TV shows have long been a launchpad for actors to skyrocket into stardom. From Sarah Michelle Gellar's breakout as Buffy Summers in Buffy the Vampire Slayer to Emilia Clarke becoming synonymous with Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones, fantasy on the small screen can transform careers. Audiences don't just watch these actors, they remember them for decades. However, not every standout performance gets the attention it deserves. While big names like Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki from Supernatural continue to dominate fan discussions, countless other actors gave equally compelling performances that never reached mainstream recognition. Their talent often gets overshadowed by bigger stars or the cultural juggernauts surrounding their shows. Still, many of these overlooked performances deserve revisiting. They weren't just good, they were scene-stealing, show-defining, and unforgettable. Decades later, these performances remain underdiscussed, but fans of fantasy TV shows should revisit them for the sheer on-screen magic these actors delivered. Anna Silk as Bo in Lost Girl, 2010 to 2015. Silk made Bo one of fantasy TV's most magnetic heroines. Anna Silk as Bo from the TV show Lost Girl. Anna Silk's portrayal of Bo in Lost Girl remains one of the most compelling and underrated lead performances in fantasy TV. Playing a succubus torn between her supernatural identity and her humanity, Silk brought a raw vulnerability that grounded the show's fantastical premise. She delivered a charismatic balance of strength, sensuality, and emotional depth that made Bo unforgettable. Anna Silk was an instant standout in Lost Girl thanks to her ability to convey both power and tenderness within the same scene. Bo was a complex protagonist navigating moral gray areas, and Silk gave the role a richness that elevated the show well beyond genre expectations. She turned what could have been pulpy escapism into an engrossing character study. For a series that thrived on world-building and myth, it was Anna Silk's performance that held Lost Girl together. It's astonishing that Bo isn't more widely remembered, as Silk created one of the most unique and magnetic heroines in fantasy TV history. David Giuntoli as Nick Burkhart in Grimm, 2011 to 2017. Giuntoli gave Nick Burkhart quiet strength and heart. Nick looking possessed with red eyes in Grimm. David Giuntoli anchored NBC's Grimm as Nick Burkhart, a homicide detective who discovers his part of a long line of monster hunters. On paper, the premise sounds pulpy, but Giuntoli's understated and grounded approach kept the show compelling across 6 seasons. His Nick was relatable, human, and quietly heroic in a way fantasy TV rarely showcases. Giuntoli excelled in balancing Nick's dual life, ordinary man by day, supernatural warrior by night. He managed to keep the role believable while navigating outlandish creatures and high-stakes battles. That level of consistency is no small feat, especially in a show where nearly every episode introduced a new fantastical element. While Grimm gained a loyal following, Giuntoli never got the recognition he deserved for carrying such a dense mythology with subtle charisma. His Nick deserves to be remembered alongside the great fantasy protagonists for giving fans a grounded hero in a fantastical world. Timothy Omundson as King Richard in Gallivant, 2015 to 2016. Omundson turned King Richard into a hilarious underdog. Timothy Omundson as King Richard looking stern in Gallivant. Timothy Omundson's King Richard in Gallivant was the kind of comedic performance that elevated an entire show. Initially written as a bumbling villain, Omundson transformed Richard into a sympathetic, hilarious, and oddly heartfelt figure. His delivery of one-liners and commitment to musical numbers made every scene unforgettable. What made Omundson's work so strong was his ability to turn absurd comedy into something emotionally resonant. Over time, King Richard became less of a caricature and more of a fully realized, insecure ruler struggling with identity and belonging. Omundson balanced sharp wit with surprising tenderness, creating a layered portrayal few expected. In a series like Gallivant that leaned heavily on parody and satire, Timothy Omundson's performance stood out as both outrageously funny and genuinely moving. Fantasy TV shows rarely feature such effective comedic villains turned heroes, and Omundson's Richard remains one of the great under-discussed highlights. Audrey Arjona as Anathema Device in Good Omens, 2019 to 2023. Arjona brought intelligence and charm to Anathema Device. Anathema holds up a talisman while reading a book in the woods in Good Omens. As Anathema Device, Audrey Arjona brought intelligence and warmth to the cast of Good Omens. The role could have easily been overshadowed by Michael Sheen and David Tennant's iconic pairing, but Arjona held her own with poise and charisma. She turned a supporting part into a vital presence in the show's apocalyptic tapestry. Anathema was a descendant of a witch and tasked with fulfilling a prophecy, a role heavy with responsibility. Arjona infused her with charm and a quiet determination, making the character both mystical and deeply human. Her performance carried an understated power, bringing balance to the show's chaotic world-ending antics. While Sheen and Tennant received endless acclaim, Arjona's contribution remains underappreciated. Her work ensured Good Omens wasn't just about angels and demons but about the humans caught in between. Fantasy TV shows thrive on strong ensembles, and Arjona proved indispensable to one of the best. Ruth Wilson as Mrs. Coulter in His Dark Materials, 2019 to 2022. Wilson made Mrs. Coulter terrifying yet strangely sympathetic. Mrs. Coulter in His Dark Materials. Ruth Wilson delivered a magnetic performance as Mrs. Coulter, one of the most complex villains in His Dark Materials. She exuded chilling elegance, portraying a woman whose manipulations and cruelty masked a profound inner conflict. Wilson's Mrs. Coulter was terrifying yet strangely sympathetic, a villain who commanded attention every time she appeared on screen. Wilson's ability to layer menace with vulnerability made the character fascinating. Her scenes with her daughter Lyra, Daphne Keene, carried immense emotional weight, highlighting the twisted bond between them. This combination of coldness and fragility turned Mrs. Coulter into one of the most multidimensional antagonists in fantasy TV. Though His Dark Materials was praised overall, Wilson's performance remains underdiscussed compared to the show's technical achievements. She deserves recognition for creating a villain who was as compelling as the heroes themselves, a performance that elevated the entire series. Mason Alexander Park as Desire in The Sandman, 2022 to 2025. Park embodied desire with charisma and menace. Desire from The Sandman. As Desire in The Sandman, Mason Alexander Park gave one of the most captivating performances in modern fantasy TV. Their portrayal of the sibling to Dream, Tom Sturridge, was alluring, mysterious, and sharp, perfectly embodying Neil Gaiman's enigmatic character. Every scene with Park radiated charisma and danger. Park's performance so effective due to how they captured Desire's duality, seductive yet threatening, playful yet cruel. Their chemistry with Sturridge was electric, creating some of the most memorable confrontations of the series. Park didn't just play Desire, they seemed to inhabit the role completely.